Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host Demo, and it's time for another deck tech. So this is Ghost of Ramirez, Depietro, and Ravos. This is a deck that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. I think one of the best abilities ever made is transmute. I've touted it a few times on this channel. I love it. I mean, especially in EDH where tutoring is so powerful. You know, if you can't afford a vampiric tutor or something, transmute is a great way to get the card that you want. And I just thought, I've built this deck a few times where I had Ravos, and then I would have a card like Dimir Houseguard, and I could transmute, tutor for something I need, and then get the Dimir Houseguard back with Ravos, and then do it again, right? So I keep repeating that. So it's a every turn I'm tutoring. I just thought that was great. It didn't really work out. I mean, first of all, I need blue. Okay, all transmute cards. For those who don't know, transmute was printed way back in the day in Ravnica block. They haven't reprinted it yet, ever, which I don't know why, because it's such a fantastic mechanic, and it's only in blue and black. So you need blue and you need black in order to really make it work. However, I do recommend, by the way, if you do have a Ravos deck of any color combination, throwing in a couple like Dimir Houseguard, Netherborn Phalanx, you know, just throw them in there just for that ability, and then you can get them back and do it again, right? But that's basically the crux of this deck, is that we are going to be transmuting. Ghost of Ramirez Depietro is even better for this. This card is really underrated. I've been using it, and man, the value is just fantastic. Being able to discard and then get something back. I mean, let's be honest, this ability, you will never use it on your opponents. I think it was the Command Zone talking about how you can use this so that you mill your opponents, and then you give them something back that was milled so they don't hate you as much, and then they don't kill you, because please don't ever do that. That's a terrible strategy. No, you're going to only use this for yourself. And what you're going to do is, I mean, first of all, I think I mentioned Arami. I don't love Arami because the self-mill, I don't love self-milling, period, because you're going to be milling your demonic tutor or some answer that you need into the graveyard. Ghost of Ramirez Depietro is, and from now on I'm just going to refer to him as Ghost because that's a mouthful. He's a great way to sort of nullify this, right? So you mill yourself, put a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, and then you swing with him, and you can get back that demonic tutor. You can get back that, you know, whatever card you want out of your graveyard that you just milled yourself this turn. However, in this deck, it's a whole lot of transmuting and, of course, a whole lot of cycling, right? If we're going to be doing that sort of theme, cycling just completely fits with this deck as well. So we have a whole bunch of cycling cards. You know, I mean, for each person, you can do what you want. I'm not going to go too much into the cycling cards. Like, I have Expunge, Reconnaissance Mission, just because these cards are going to be good in the deck anyway. You know, I have Akroma's Vengeance. I have Radiant's Judgment. You know, I mean, it's just removal that we need in our deck anyway, right? So why not have it? Rebuild is a super underrated card. And then Decree of Pain, again, just another card that is good whether you have a cycling deck or not. And then we have a couple, you know, most importantly, we have cards like Sanctum Plowbeast and Jessian Zombies. First of all, these can go get us lands, which is great, but also they're creatures, right? We want to be, we want to have enough creatures that we can get back, because Ravos can't get back an Expunge, right? But he can get back a Sanctum Plowbeast or a Jessian Zombies. So we want to be able to have cards that both of our commanders can sort of connect with, right? So, I'm not going to go over all of the cycling cards I have in this deck, but, you know, you can just put in what you want that fits with you. I also have Splendor Mare and Void Beckoner, just because it's kind of nice to be able to get those, you know, Death Touch and Lifelink counters, especially because we are going to be attacking a lot, right? So giving our Ghost a Death Touch counter can be very beneficial, right? Because we need him to connect. So that's the theme of the deck. The theme of the deck is we're going to be doing a lot of cycling. We're going to be doing a lot of transmuting, and then we're going to be getting that stuff back, right? It's just, there's so much value there. I love having answers and being able to tutor for an Anguished Unmaking or a Cleansing Nova, you know, because that's the answer you need at the time. I just think works so well. You know, this is obviously going to lean towards, because it's an Esper deck, it's going to lean towards the control theme a little bit, right? And then later in the game, you throw down Ravos, and then you can start getting back stuff out of your graveyard that you've been cycling and transmuting the whole game. So obviously, if we're going to be doing a lot of cycling and transmuting, right, for those who don't know, you read the wording on the card, right? It says you discard that card, right? So you're going to be discarding your Expunge to draw a card, or you're going to be discarding your Dimir House Guard to get a card, right? So that means we want lots of discard effects, right? That now we're getting even more value, right? So Drake Haven, Faith of the Devoted, just great value. Again, we're going to be doing lots of discarding. Every time we do that, we just pay an extra one and we drain. Or we pay an extra one and we get a Drake token. Bone Miser, man, this card, this is a card that didn't exist the last time I tried to make this deck. So good in this deck. I mean, making mana, drawing cards, making tokens is just going to be super, super good in this deck. Wharf Infiltrator is another one, a little underrated. It is going to also be doing, it does have that draw and discard as well. So it pairs really well with Ghost, because you can, if you don't have any cycling cards in your hand, you can just swing with both of these. Both are going to trigger at the same time. You put the Wharf Infiltrator on the stack last. So you put Ghost first, then Wharf Infiltrator. You'll loot, right? And then you'll get that card right back with Ghost, or even if you don't, even whatever you cycled this turn, you don't want to get it back, you can just do that instead, right? And then also it has the bonus of, if you discard a creature card, you can pay 2 and make a colorless Eldrazi token. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. So Wharf Infiltrator can just sit there and make us tokens as well. Curator of Mysteries is okay. It has cycling as well. That's why I put it in the deck. So we can just cycle it. It costs 1. Having stuff that cycles for 1 mana is good, because this is a mana intensive deck. We're going to cycle, then we're going to want to pay 1 for Drake Haven, or we're going to transmute, which costs 3. This is a mana intensive deck. So having things that cycle for 1 mana is good. It also has that benefit of, whenever you cycle or discard, you scry 1. So I think it's worth putting in. Like I said, anything, if you have different cycling cards that you prefer, you can do that. As long as you stick to theme, right? Archfiend of Ifnir, though, is an absolute no-brainer in this deck. This card just kills. You get this out and immediately discard something, and this is why it can also be good, and I'll get to this, to have just discard effects, period. Because sometimes just being able to discard stuff without having to pay for it is good. But man, this is brutal. This just can wipe out your opponent's entire armies just by cycling a couple of things. It's so good. Some other cards that we have in the deck, Skeleton Key. Again, this is, first of all, it gives our Ghost Skulk, so it helps with the unblockability of him. But also it has that loot effect, where you can connect with him, stack the triggers so that you loot with him, and then the card you just pitched in your graveyard, you can immediately get right back. And again, this is another thing where, like with Archfiend of Ifnir, we're going to loot, and when we do, we put a -1/-1 counter on all our opponent's creatures, right? It's just value on top of value on top of value. Writ of Passage, I just put, one more thing in here just to really make sure that our Ghost isn't getting blocked. It's super important that he's connecting every turn. Like I said, later in the game, we can throw Ravos down and then he can get his stuff back. But early in the game especially, we want to be connecting a lot. Etherrot Page, this is an interesting one. I just really like this card. I love cards, I've said before in a few of my deck techs, I love cards that A, give us lots of options, and B, just give us value without us having to put anything into it. Something that just triggers on your upkeep or on your end step every turn is just really great. I just really like that, because it just sits there and gives you value all game. And when it's something that is underwhelming, when it's Rhystic Study, people are going to target and they're going to kill it. Etherrot Page, I promise you, you're going to play this and it's just going to sit there the entire game. No one's going to care. And you can just sit there and gain 2 life every turn, or you can have your opponents lose 1 life. It's like a bee sting. Nobody's going to care about it. It's just going to sit there. However, the important part here is that you may look at the top card of your library and put it into your graveyard. This is essentially draw a card. Ghost's ability is a card discarded or put into your graveyard from your library. So you can just throw whatever. It doesn't matter what, I mean, if you want, you can just get rid of the top card of your library if it's a land and you don't need any more lands or whatever. However, if you want, you can just constantly be flipping the top card of your library in your graveyard every turn and then get it back with Ghost. So you're essentially just drawing another card every turn. So it's just really great value. Monastery Siege, again, it's modal, great. So if our opponents have lots of removal, we can pick dragons on this one. But more so, we're going to do cons because, again, it's just an extra draw every turn. And it's an extra discard trigger every turn, which is also important. Ghostly Pilfer, same thing. It's a good card, but also it's a discard outlet if we really want a discard outlet. So I threw it in there for a number of different reasons. Dreamscape Artist, just a goofy card. It's ramp in blue, essentially, right? So, it's like a harrow, essentially, right? Except instead of sacrificing your land, you're discarding a card. We want to discard cards, so, heck, why not? And then Guards' Assassin. I love this card. Just super sweet art. Silly card that probably a lot of people haven't used. I always put this in my Ravos deck because what I've found when I play Ravos is sometimes I won't have a creature in my graveyard to get back on my upkeep. And that just seems like a waste to me. So I always put Guards' Assassin in my Ravos decks so that, on my opponent's end step, I can sacrifice him, kill a creature, and then immediately get him right back. So I always have something in my graveyard that I can get back. So it's always good to have stuff like that. And then one more little ditty here. This is an interesting card. Behold the Beyond is a card that I think is really underplayed in Commander. Just imagine late in the game, you're empty-handed anyway, and you're top decking. Paying 7, I know 7 mana sounds like a lot, but really in Commander it's not. And paying 7 mana to search for 3 cards, if you think about a card like Increasing Ambition, which people play a lot and I play a lot, you're paying 5 to tutor for 1. And then almost every time I cast Increasing Ambition, I flash it back. And I think the flashback is 9. So you're paying 9 mana to go get 2 cards. Behold the Beyond is 7 mana to get 3 cards, right? And the discard your hand thing isn't that bad. We can just get discard triggers. That's good. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I just think this is an underplayed card in the format, period. Also combos really well with another card that we have in this deck, which is Shadow of the Grave. Shadow of the Grave is another card that I don't know if anyone's ever played it in Commander, but it works good in this deck because if we don't have, this is sort of a backup. We don't have Ghost out. We don't have Ravos out, right? We just want to cycle a bunch. So you can cycle like 3-4 cards and then get them all back for 2 mana. Also, combos really well with Behold the Beyond, right? Because what you do is you cast Behold the Beyond, you discard your hand, you go get Shadow of the Grave as one of the 3 cards, right? So you get 2 other cards, whatever you want, and Shadow of the Grave. You cast Shadow of the Grave and you get your hand back that you just discarded. So that's kind of neat. So yeah, that's, for the most part, that's the deck. And then the great thing about this deck is the rest of the deck is just good stuff. It's just stuff that you want to play, right? It's just cards you've always wanted to play in a deck, maybe. So for example, I have Aether Snap in this deck, a super underrated, fantastic card that nobody plays and they should. Aethersworn Adjudicator, another. These are sort of like random cards that they're just good cards that are really good in certain situations. And because we can go tutor for them, because we can go get them, right? We can discard or transmute our Brain Spoil, right? I didn't go over all of the transmute cards because you can just look up yourself what all the transmute cards is. I didn't put all of them in. I just put most of them in, particularly the creatures. The creatures are important because we can get them back with Ravos, right? But with Brain Spoil, I can get my Aether Snap, I can go get my Cleansing Nova, I can get my Aethersworn Adjudicator, I can go get my Archfiend of Ifnir, which is probably the first thing I'm going to grab because it's so good in this deck, right? And that's the idea. So you can really just put whatever you want. Obviously removal is important, but other than that, you just put what you want in here. Have fun with it. That's great. The great thing about it. As far as lands go, obviously we're going to want cycling lands. I have Ash Barrens, Fetid Pools, any cycling lands you want to put in here. It is a 3-color deck, so I don't know if you want to go too deep in the cycling lands. Another thing, though, Reliquary Tower is a card that probably gets played too much. People put it in like every deck. This deck, though, you're definitely going to want it in. because you're going to have a full hand a lot. I've found playing this, I've played this a few times, and my hand is full a lot. So having Reliquary Tower in this deck is pretty important. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the deck. So thanks for tuning in.